Chofetz Chaim, Alas Chesed, quotes a Kuntres Ba'Nisa Tova, which he writes about with great admiration. And in that Kuntres, there's a few lines that's important to hear. So Hilchos Yodei b'Shabbos b'Shum Pa'ula, not to move on Shabbos, and Mayachshav Akhila, v'Yasem Aliba, Yimei b'Chashash Issa Chilul Shabbos. Basically, a person has to live Shabbos day and be careful what he does, and not to inadvertently Chalila b'Machal Shabbos. And I was thinking how true that is, especially when you talk about the questions of Boyer. As we'll see today, Boyer is unique amongst malachos. That either it's mutter gamur, or it could be or usually it's chil Shabbos deraisa. Other malachos it's the Rabbanan, but Boyer, as we'll see, either it's heter gamur or chil Shabbos. It's noteworthy, it's probably unprecedented. In Boyer, the first 5 sifrim, everyone is chayiv. Chad Loshen is chayiv. Again, it's rare. Usually it's the Rabbanans, but that's really the challenge of Hilchos Boyer, particularly of all of Hilchos Shabbos. Now today I wanted, as I said, to look into the sugya of Boyer as it applies and mini Shabbos b'Shabbatai, whether it's Boyer with food, with clothing, with svarim, and many other interesting questions. And before I begin, I want just to make, as we know, Derech always is, to find one yesod to try to give us enough guidance, enough information to all of our shaylas. We seem to be convinced that in certain situations, Boyer is mutter. I guess the most obvious case, a person has chicken or fish, there's eichel and there's psilus. The bones have psilus, the food is eichel. But you're allowed to eat chicken, you're allowed to eat fish. So we seem to be convinced that Boyer is mutter if you do it right. And indeed, in the Masechta Shabbos, Avayin Dalet, the Gemara does say that in certain situations, when there's 3 preconditions, Boyer in fact is mutter. In other words, if you do it wrongly, it's chayav chatas. But if you follow the 3 preconditions, it's okay. The way to remember, incidentally, is the word ayil. Aleph Yud Lamed is the Rosh Tevis Oichel, Yad, and La'alter. And I'll explain that in a minute. But for good measure, Ayil, Mishulish, which means the 3 Ayil, the 3 letters of the word Ayil, is the gematria, as we'll see soon, Yivra Ha'oichel Biyad, which is Mamish Samach L'Achila. Yivra Ha'oichel Biyad, Samach L'Achila. So it's very, very much in the word ayil, and that I saw in the Sefer Ayil Meshulish, which is a Sefer on Hilchos Boyer. So it's interesting. Ayil is the 3 preconditions: oichel, yad, la'alt. Now let me explain. Let's take that case of chicken. There's oichel and there's psilus. If you're careful to take the chicken off the bone, as opposed to taking the bone out of the chicken, you're taking the oichel, the good from the bad. Yad means use your hand, not a clean Boyer. A good example would be you cook lakshin for Shabbos, but you forgot to strain it. Now the lakshin's in the water. It's a taruvos, it's a mixture. So to take the lakshin out to be used right away is fine. Oichel, yad, la'alta. But to go get a strainer and strain the water, the strain is a clean Boyer and that makes it us. So again, either it's perfectly mutter, l'chatchila, or it's chayiv chatas. And the 3rd precondition, the lamed, is la'alta. You're allowed to make Boyer if you take the good, and you don't use a keli, but it has to be for immediate use. The perfect example would be the lakshin or the chicken. I'll give you a better example. I want to use this example. Picture, as if it's in front of us, a cluster of grapes. There are some spoiled grapes. The spoiled grapes are taruvos. To pluck out the spoiled grapes is psilus. That's chayav chatas. But to take the good grapes for immediate use, to eat it right away, is perfectly mutter. To take the good grape and put it in a bag and send it to your child to have it in shul for later use, You're not using a keli, you're taking the good from the bad, but it's missing the third precondition of la'alta. And the big question, which really is the aside for today, we'll soon see the aside for today is two words, but two helpful words. But the question is, why is this so? You make up a fancy preconditions and ayol, everything sounds great, but since when are you allowed to do malacha deraisa if you're eating it right away? You say it's la'alta, fine. Are you allowed to bake a cake if you eat it right away? Are you allowed to cook if you eat it right away? And that happens to be the Gemara's question. The Gemara in Shabbos Dabayin down that same Gemara, the Gemara questions this. Okay, you say it's mutter if you do it without a keli, la'alta, v'chi mutter la'efes l'baybiyan, v'chi mutter la'vashel l'baybiyan. What are you talking about? Why is bayr different than any other malacha? You can't do it for immediate use. So Rashi and Taisa say a word, it's not derech breira, but what the point seems to be, the Ritva, the Ran, the Gemara, and the Rashba, and Chayla Dalsim and Ayinei, all use, again, the key word for today, and that is what the words of derech Akhila. To put it very simply, picture a cluster of grapes. If you take a grape and eat it right away, you're eating. And as the Rav Shulchan Aruch, the beautiful husband, beginning of Shir Yotes explained, the Torah allowed us to eat on Shabbos. And the Torah, of course, did not require us to eat everything, including the bones. So how are you supposed to eat? How are you supposed to eat chicken or fish or a cluster of grapes? And the Torah didn't want us to be unreasonable and eat of the psilos. So says the Rav, if you eat for immediate use, you take out the good and eat the good, that's derech achila, and that's not a ma'aseh malach. When is boyer awesome? And that's the word that he uses, but the Rishonim use. Boyer is awesome because it's tikkun oichel. And I'll show you in Eibah how simple and beautiful it is. Picture the same cluster of grapes. You take out a grape and you eat it right away. That's derech achila. But I have a different alternative. Cluster of grapes, same cluster of grapes. I first take out all the rotten grapes. What are you doing? You're not eating. You're not eating the rotten grapes. The teretz is you want to be misakin the food. You want to perfect it. And then you want to eat it. Oh, that's boyer. Boyer is tikkun oichel. Boyer is perfecting the food. To eat it, derech achila is perfectly mutter. So derech achila is mutter gama. And tikkun oichel is chayiv chatas. And the Rav spells it out. That explains why if you use a keli, it's also tikkun oichel. Because you want to eat, just eat. Why do you go and use a kli boyer? And then the Rav and see Beis, which really is so pashut, that also explains if you take the good without a keli, but you do it for later use. Why is it chayiv chatas? If it's lacking la'alter precondition, why is it chayiv chatas? Says the Rav, beautiful. You're taking out grapes for later use. That's not derech achila. You want to eat? Eat. That's gesundheit. But you're doing it now for later? So the deciding factor is ayil. Oichel, yad la'alta. But what's the underlying principle of it? Because boyer is tikkun oichel, and derech achila is not the issa boyer. B'yasa b'yer, or b'yasa gishmak, like we like to say, is a big kasha. The Yeshua Yaakov in the beginning of Shir Yotes says, since he was a child, he never understood it. How is the shaykh there's an issa deraisa of boyer? Boyer doesn't make sense according to the basic guidelines of Hilchos Shabbos. The basic principle of Hilchos Shabbos is it's only asa malacha hatzricha legufa. If someone carries something to use it, that's carrying. If someone carries something because he wants it out of the house, he wants to take the mace out of the house, there's no direct use. You're not using the Hitzah, it's only the Abban. Fred the Yeshua Yaakov, and after the Meiri in Kuvav asked the same question. So how is boyer ever asa? What's boyer? You take out a rotten grape from the cluster. You're not using the rotten grape. So why isn't every boyer, by definition, a malacha shein tzricha legufa, and therefore should be chayiv chatas? Says the Yeshua Yaakov, and the words of music tower is Why is something boyer? Because you have a mixture. And the mixture disturbs the way the food either looks or is. So he says, the malacha of boyer ain't it creates al breiras psoilas. The issa of boyer is not taking out the rotten grapes. Rak misakin ha'oichel shiroi l'achila. V'zeh malacha shetzricha l'gufa. The mashvi oichel gam. And it's mustard mitvash. The issa is not taking out the rotten grapes like carrying the vase out of the house. The issa is perfecting the food. The issa, he used that lashon, tikkun oichel. Oh, tikkun oichel, perfecting the food, is certainly a malacha hatzricha l'gufa. And to give you a most beautiful illustration, imagine if someone does milah shaloi bizman on Shabbos. That's for sure. Not that. So that's chayiv chatas. I will say, why is the malacha shetzricha l'gufa? He's not using the oral of anything. But the answer is, the reason why milah is very much tzricha l'gufa, it's a tikkun of the baby. From an oral, he became a mother. That's the most significant tikkun. So here we have the basic yesod that the issa of boyer is tikkun oichel. The reason why it's mutter when the three preconditions are met, because it's derech achila. Let me just show you another illustration to this. In Shin Chav Sif Katan Zayin, the Magen Avram quotes from an earlier source, the Ayla Shabbos, that just like you're allowed to make just like you're allowed to make boyer for immediate use, why don't we say you could make schita and squeeze grape juice to use it to make kiddush? So the Magen Avram said, I don't understand this kasha. Your premise is wrong. You're starting with the assumption that if you do malacha for immediate use, it's mutter. So now you have a kasha, do schita for immediate use. But that makes no sense. You can't do a malacha for immediate use. And to quote the Gemara doesn't, so why is boyer mutter? What? Elatam the boyer biyad lechela alta the leimikri boyer that derech achila. Again, that magical word. That if it's derech achila, it's not the pshat that you have to eat. You're allowed mechal Shabbos. That's nonsense. You can't mechal Shabbos to eat. If it's derech achila, it's not an issa. It's eating. If it's tikkun oichel is chayiv chatas. So now the Baruch Hashem, we have a better understanding of the issa boyer, a better understanding of the heta of ayil. Let's try to apply it from case to case. Let's start with a somewhat of a tricky question. You want to peel an egg for the Shabbos soup, you want to peel an orange to eat. Is it mutter? So let's look at the checklist. Ayil. You're not using a keli, it's yad. You're eating it right away, fine. But the bell starts to ring because it's not oichel mitoyach psoilas. The way to peel an egg or an orange, you have to take off the shell from the food. So you're taking the psoilas from the oichel. Boy, that's like taking the bone out of the chicken. So why is that mutter? Why is it mutter to peel an egg? Why is it mutter to peel an orange? And from Shulchan Aruch and Shin Chaf Aleph, it's clear, if you peel to eat for immediate use, it's mutter. But the question is, it's not loud. So for us, it's very beautiful. Why is it mutter if it's derech achila? Why is it asa if it's tikkun oichel? Foods that have peels, and the only way to do it is to take off the peel, that's the derech achila. So it's not the pshat. You want to eat an orange? Okay, let him mechal Shabbos. The way to eat the orange and the only way to do it is use your hand for immediate use, but you have to take off the psoy. And who says this? That I'm a Mordechai in Shin Chav Aleph, Sif Chav Aleph. He asked this kasha, why is it with the peel? I taking the psoilas. The nere kiven the efshi ben yenacha the derech achilosai bekach like mikra boyer. So it's mamish that those words derech achila is a deciding fact if it's mutter or chayiv chat. Consider the next question. Someone wants to peel or he wants to do boyer, but he's not going to use it right away. He's not going to eat it right away. So what's the shayla? He wants to give it to someone else. He wants to peel an orange for a child, for a guest, for a neighbor. You might suggest, well, if he's not eating it right away, it's not la'alta. But that doesn't make sense. If someone else will use it right away, it's also good. Now, here again, this makes sense if you understand the svar. The reason why boyer la'alt is mutter is not the pshat. Since you enjoy the taste of the orange, it's like esed doichel. I used to say you're allowed to do it. That's mamish nonsense. You can't do an issa for Einik Shabbos. The heta is it becomes a derech achila. It's not a tikkun eichel. So who cares if you're eating it or someone else is eating it? If you give it to someone else to eat, so it's a derech achila and it's also a mitzvah of chesed. So definitely the poskim say, and actually the Shulchan Aruch says, afilu acherem oichlen imay shoy. And there are a number of rights, which the Burra points out, as you've got involved, even if it's not your guest, even if it's a stranger, as long as someone benefits from it for immediate use, it's mutter. There's a right from Gemara, from Yishalmi, even to give it to animals. As long as there's an immediate benefit, that makes it a derech achila, and it's not a tikkun. Consider the next question, which is also a tricky question. Let's say a person puts fish or some chicken in his mouth, and he realizes, he has a bone in his mouth. Or an old-fashioned mushel, watermelon seeds, or grape pits, which you rarely see any longer. But because he had psoilus in his mouth, is oichel and psoilus in his mouth. Till now we're talking about on the plate, chicken on the plate, or cluster of grapes. Now he has oichel and psoilus in his mouth. There's fish and a bone. Is he allowed to remove the bone from his mouth? Is he allowed to remove the pits from his mouth? Well, let's look at the checklist. You're taking with your hand for immediate use, but you tell me you're taking out the bone from your mouth, taking out the pits from your mouth. You're taking out the psoilus, not the oichel. So maybe it should be us. However, there's a raya from Shulchan Aruch and Shin Yud Tes Siv Tes Zayin that in your mouth, when the food is in your mouth, there's no ma'aseh boyer. And the Chazon Ish in Dalet Dalet says that in the mouth there's no butter. But the question is why? It's not. You're taking the psoilus, not the oichel. But again, for us, it's beautiful. You don't have the option of taking the food out of your mouth. What are you going to take the food out and then swallow the bone? That's not derech achila. The normal derech achila when there's psoilus in your mouth is to take out the psoilus. So therefore, the Achronim explain that's what the Shulchan Aruch means. When it's in your mouth, the derech achila is take out a little bit of psoilus and enjoy the remaining oichel. So in the mouth itself, taking out pits or bones, even if you're taking the psoilus, that's derech achila and it's perfect meaning. And the emphasis, we see this. In Shin Chav Sivkat Yud Beis, the Mishnah Berurah says, squeezing on Shabbos is also schita. But in your mouth, you're allowed to suck the juice from the grapes, because in the mouth there's no ma'aseh of Chilul Shabbos. Or Shin Mem Sivkat Yud Zayin, the Mishnah Berurah says that you put food that has lettering and you eat it, and as you're eating, you're destroying the lettering. Derech achila, there's no issa of machik. It's the same issa. In the mouth itself, there's no malach. I guess the best example is when a person chews, he's teichen the food. Is there an issa teichen? The answer is in the mouth, there's no issa. Consider the next question. Someone has to dress a child, and he's very particular about the proper color. White has to go with a certain outfit. Now, the drawer is full of socks, different color socks. Now, if it's organized blue, black, and white in different parts, so it's not a teruvos. Now, I hope it's obvious. We're talking about today when it's a mixture, when it's a teruvos, it's a halachic mixture. If each item is laying separately, it's not a teruvos. It's not mixed up. If it's not mixed up, there can't be boyer. And I want to just be any shot of today, we're talking about that there's a teruvos. There's an halachic mixture, and then you have to separate. If it's not a teruvos, there's no shayla. Here we're talking about there are different colored socks in the drawer, and it's all mixed up. It's not so easy to locate the blue as opposed to the black. So the question is it mutter Friday night? The mother wants to sleep late Shabbos morning, but she wants her child dafka to have blue and not black. But you take out the blue socks Friday night and put it on the child's pile, so the next morning he'll get up and dress himself. So that's clear. It's come out in first in Shulchan Aruch that boyer is not necessarily only food, even non-food. Boyer is by svarim, by clothing, usumsi by cutlery, if it's all mixed up. Is it mutter Friday night to take out the blue socks so the child can wear Shabbos morning? So you're not using a keli. You're taking the good from the bad, because presumably the black socks are considered psoilus, even though they're useful, but not for you. So the it sounds wonderful. The problem is it's not la'alter. Friday night for Shabbos morning is not la'alter. And there you see again, HaRav matluya b'sar. The same act, if it's just the wrong timing, Mr. Burr says it's not la'alter, the Chavis says it's chayiv chatas. Setting a table. What could be wrong with setting a table? Nothing. If the plates are all organized separately, and all the cutlery, the forks are separate, knives are separate, spoons are separate, it's not a teruba. You can have a table whenever you want. But the shaila is after you wash the dishes Friday night, and all the cutlery are in one stack, in one sink drainer, dish drainer. Now you want to set up for the Shabbos soup. So you have to take out only the knives, only the forks, not the soup spoons. There's no soup Shabbos day. So here you have a situation. You're taking the good from the bad, you're taking out what you need. You're not using a keli. But the problem is it's not la'alta. Set the table Friday night when it's a teruva situation. To use Shabbos morning is a chayiv chatas. It's boyer that's not for immediate use. If you do it right before the Suda, it's okay. You're not eating the silverware, but of course, it's lav dafka derech achilah to eat it. You could use the sock, you could use the silverware. So there you see again that situation. It could be perfectly mutter if you know the right halacha, or it could be a chayiv kat. Now the big question is, we keep on saying it has to be la'alta. How do you define la'alta? The Pais can use two words interchangeably, la'alta or miyad. How do you define la'alta? How do you define miyad? In halacha, you're not allowed to eat samach lemincha. What does samach lemincha mean? A half hour. Sometimes you tell your child, do something, so I'm doing it right away. You take a month. So sometimes right away is a month. So how do you define the word miyad or la'alta? So it makes it challenging. The Gemara has two extremes. La'alta is muta. L'boy bayoim for later today is us. And what about an hour later? How about 2 hours later? So I must tell you, there's a big arichas in the Rishonim, and to iron this out will take a good half hour, and I have much more of an agenda to do. But basically, what's Negeil halacha, there are Rishonim that learn the word la'alta or the word miyad literally. You're allowed to make boira, take out the grapes, to eat immediately. Take out the grape and eat it. You're sitting by your Suda, you want to eat the eggs, fine. Peel the eggs and ask them to take. You get the dessert, peel the oranges and have dessert. But there's no heta any much earlier than la'alta miyad. But there are Rishonim that say la'alta in this context means before the Suda. Right before the Suda as a preparatory act. If you prepare for the Suda, that's also derech achilah. In other words, you come up from shul, and you finish Ma'at Sedra, and you're ready to start the Suda, then you can start preparing, and you eat. You can't prepare the Suda, then be Ma'at Sedra. That's not la'alta. But before the Suda is considered la'alta. How do we pass it? Some say it's la'alta literally. So in the beginning of Shin Test, the Mechabes Machmer, in bir biyadi lechel la'alta mutter. Right away. Ramah says, "V'chol mashe bira l'tzorich oisa suda shemeisevo miyad." V'chol mashe bira l'tzorich oisa suda shemeisevo miyad mikri la'alta. Ramah seems to say, you prepare for that suda, it's fine. And Ramah is being more making than the Mechab. Zok the goyim. Where did the Ramah get this kula from? You're not eating right away, you're preparing, and then you're going to make kiddush, and then you're going to sing some airs, and then you're going to eat. Why is it mutter before the Suda? So that's one of the treats of learning Shulchan Aruch Be'iyah, and the Goyen's cryptic messages are always a treat. He writes briefly, Midekama Sham Ulaboy B'yoyim, Mashma La'alta Lav La'alta Mamish. The Goyen saying a beautiful Yisai. The Gemara says La'alta is Mutta, but Laboy B'yoyim, for later today, is also. And how about for the next Suda? For that Suda, I should say. So if the Goyen says, there are more help with this Minei Bay, La'alta is Lav Dafka, peel and eat. But La'alta means peel and then start the Suda. Now, what's a little tricky, the Ramah's Lashon is a bit inconsistent. Now, the Diktuk is a little, inconsistent. The Ramah's Lashon is the Suda Shemesiv Ba. What does Mesiv mean? Mesiv means that he is sitting, not She Yosef, that he will sit down soon. But his next word, Miyad, indicates that he didn't yet start the Suda. So I guess based on this, the Gordon and the Mushisrad both say the Ramah holds you're allowed to prepare before the Suda began. Before the Suda is in progress, prepare what's needed for that Suda as long as you start eating right after the preparation. So we're comfortable to say, although the Mechaber was Machmir, but the Ramah, Bnei Yisrael, Yoitzim B'Yad Ramah, you're allowed to prepare before the Suda. How much time do you have before the Suda? Is there a time limit? So the Chazon Ish is quoted in a number of Svarim, Shulchan Aruch is based on Ayin Tes, and the Ayom Meshulish Kuf Yud Zayin, and Chut HaShani from the Sinkarelis. Chazon Ish says the maximum time to prepare before the Suda is a half hour. Probably he drew the parallel from Hilchos Tefillah. Sabach means a half hour. Now, the Chazon Ish didn't say a half hour you have regardless, because if you only need 5 minutes, you have 5 minutes. But he meant a big Suda you have a half hour. But most Paiskim don't limit it to that, and most Paiskim say it's fully subjective. If you have a big oilam, and you're having a big Suda, and you have to prepare 2 hours, you have a lot of eggs to peel, a lot of salad to peel, then you have the time you need. It could be 2 hours, which the Brewer spells it out as he's cutting down it. I feel kama shoyis, as long as the breira is samach l'suda. The Shmir Shabbos in Gimel Samach Tes says, when we say Suda, he calls it Egli Tal. Suda means all of the courses. Let's say a person is anticipating a long Suda, big Suda, he has a big Shabbat Brachos, and a long Suda can be at least 12 speeches. Till dessert will probably be 2 hours from when you wash. And it takes 2 hours to prepare. So he comes out, he's peeling the dessert 4 hours before he ate it. But that's fine. Because we look at the Suda as one unit, and we look at the preparation as one unit, and we need 2 hours to prepare this dessert, this whole Suda. Rav Moshe puts it very succinctly in Chelek Dal, 7-9 Dal, Kavod Gimel. Ein shah zu shir shel shah. The word shah doesn't mean an hour. El azman shederchu leisha zu shemisadera sa'aychu l'suda. What you eat for this Suda. Less than that, to do more what you need, even a few minutes is us. But it could be even hours, as long as that's what you need for the Suda. Now, just to mention, is the Toras Shabbos, who was an anicle of the Korban Asano, in the beginning of Shin Yud Tes, he's not happy about this broad kula. And he said, how can we forget that some say La'alta is literally? Some do not permit any preparing any boyer before the Suda. Some Yishayim, talking about Rabbeinu Chanal and other great Yishayim, only permit boyer by peeling the eggs and eating the eggs, peeling the salad and eating the salad. So you want to be making before the Suda. But he says, why isn't anybody chayshish for a dror the Issa D'Oraisa? And why is anybody worried about Machlis Roisha and Bein Harim B'Doy? And he says it's unthinkable to prepare the dessert before the Suda. Talking about preparing butter 2 hours before you use it. He's very not happy about that. But what could I say? Most Paiskim are makel. But one thing we will say is that a person has to be careful not to overuse or abuse his heter. If someone prepares for the Suda and then washes right away, that's fine. If there's something in between, something significantly in between, you're allowed to sneeze in between preparing and the washing. But you're allowed to sing Zemiris, you're allowed to make Kiddush, you're allowed to say Shalom Aleichem Friday night. Whatever it is, you're allowed to do normal Suda activity. But something that's unnecessary to prepare, and then being said to prepare and go for a walk because you want to air out because you worked so hard, doesn't seem to be correct. The ikid, preparing and then eating the suda. I used to wonder, let's say you have to prepare, you need an hour to prepare for the suda. Now, a half hour of it is borer activity, peeling, and a half hour is non-borer activity, cutting up the gefilte fish is not borer, and making the portions is not borer. So you have an hour preparation, half of borer and half of non-borer. Do you have to organize it that the borer activity is done last? So on this it's in Ayam Shul's Kufi and Zion says no. You look at it like one unit preparing, you'll have to do preparing before the suda. So you could taka indeed first peel, if that's more convenient, and then you could cut up the gefilte fish and you can make the portions. So it's a logic that you're doing it samuch l'suda in the least amount of time that's possible in between. Just to give an example, we have in our camp there's a very big island, and the waiters that serve, they have to serve, they can't eat while they're serving. So they have a waiters minyan, and they daven, and they usually finish an hour before the oil of the camp finishes. So they once asked me to have an hour in between, and they did a half hour to prepare, which involves boiler, sorting, and selecting, and they have to have the suda. And it's a little more convenient, they first prepare, they finish, and they can have the suda, and they feel, at ease. But that's not right. If the boiler they're doing is not right away, they're going to make boiler, and then they're going to eat their suda, that's not a het. If the boiler is for their own suda, that's fine. But there's no het of riba b'shur. You can't prepare for a camp, for an oilam, and then eat. Because that eating is taken away from the la'alta heta, which really won't exist in that situation. Now it's also pashut that once they're preparing for the Shabbos Suda, and they have to make eggs for the day and eggs for Shabbos Sudas, can they prepare extra for the Shabbos Sudas? The answer is of course not. Because again, Ribi Shurim is a heta perhaps in Hilchos Yom Tov. But as the Ramah says, preparing more than you need is Chayiv Chatas. Now, you're allowed to prepare a little extra naturally. You don't have to be mitzamtzim. You're allowed to prepare generously. But prepare for another Suda once I'm added, quote unquote, that's not a het. And it should be mentioned, it's not only B'nai Torah waiters, Yiddish workers at home. If it comes up, you have a Yiddish maid that's working, she's making preparations, it's fine, you do it in advance. But if it involves boira, it's only mutter to do it, samach lo eisesud. You can't say, I'm going to go home in the afternoon, I'll do all so I'll shoot this achana now, and I'm going to go home. Again, if there's no boira, there's a date. But if it involves boira, and she prepares the salad that shall shoot this before the day suda, or even after the day suda, it's not la'alta, that's a deraisa boira. Now, if you have a goiter that does it, so you could say, I goiter the nafsha. She wants to go home, she wants to relax. She can do it whenever she wants. But if it's a Yiddish person doing malacha and it's boyer, they should be told that this is not right. And I think I want to mention also, just to balance it somewhat, la'alta, like everything else in Yiddishkeit, has to be normal. Darchi noya. You don't have to prepare, peel, and then run to the suda and make another tense atmosphere in the house. Hurry up, let's wash, quick it's going to be. If it's not la'alta, it's boyer. Like everything else, you're allowed to do things normally. You prepare for the suda, then you could wash, and if the child starts to cry for a minute, don't start saying, you're being mechal Shabbos, we're not starting right away. You're allowed to sing Semirs. It doesn't have to be a behola. If the guests say will come between 10 and 11, so you're allowed to be ready at 10. You have to wait till 11 just in case they don't come. You have to be ready. If the husband comes home later than usual and the wife shouldn't start worrying, I was mechal Shabbos, because it's now la'alta. And like everything else, you're allowed to prepare a little bit extra just in case. Basically, like everything else, there's a seichel to it. You prepare samach l'suda, and like the Torah malachi asharis, you're allowed to imagine how much you need. If there's leftovers, good, you'll have it on Sunday, but it's not chil Shabbos. Someone asked me an interesting question: how do you prepare on Shalosh Shudas for dessert? I said, what's wrong with dessert and Shalosh Shudas? So he was worried we're going to eat it at night. You didn't get bench, but it's already pretty late. So you're preparing on Shabbat for Matzah Shabbos. So I told him, it's interesting, Rav Zalman has an unbelievable point. I saw this in the Shulchan Shlomo on the Shin Samach Beis. He has the Chalakash. How could you peel an orange? Bein Hashmashos, twilight zone, Mitzvah Shabbos. Maybe the minute you peeled it was Shabbos, and you ate it a minute later, which is a bona fide la'alta. Maybe then the day changed, because Bein Hashmashos, the day changes. So you peeled it on Shabbos, and you ate it Mitzvah Shabbos. See, this is something incredible. The problem is not boyer. You peeled it on Shabbos and ate it Mitzvah Shabbos. So what? La'alta decides if it's boyer or oichel. So who cares if you prepared on Shabbos Mitzvah Shabbos? If you ate it right away, it's la'alta. The only problem is hachana. But it says boyer would be mutter. Theoretically, you could peel on Shabbos Mitzvah Shabbos as long as the altar. Because the altar negates the Yisra boyer Shabbat. So what's the problem? Hachana. He says, he writes it very poetically, as long as it's Yom HaShabbos HaGadol Hazeh, as long as you're extending the Shabbos, you didn't say Baruch HaMavdil, as long as it's still Shabbos, albeit Tosefes Shabbos, it's not a chut. But the beauty is, even if you actually prepare, you peel on Shabbos, theoretically, and eat it the next moment, sorry Shabbos, it's fine. I told this person, if you want an interesting dessert, Shabbos Shidduch Shaila, I had it recently for the first time, and I don't remember hearing it's a Shaila, but it was an Eifa. Someone asked me, are you allowed to eat dessert by Shabbos Shidduch? I said, what do you have against dessert? So he said, the minig is you make a bracha on dessert. Let's say he has an apple for dessert. And he washed taka, what's your name? He's having his apple, and he's going to bench. He looks at his clock, it's already 60 minutes or 70 minutes after Shkia. So his cheshbon, since he's making a bracha on the apple, maybe it's not part of, a raya is not part of Suda Shlishis. And you're not allowed to eat before Havdalah. Only what's part of the Suda is not part of the Suda. So I told you, make no mistake. It is part of the Suda. But raya, when you bench, you don't have to make the burn of fashion on the apple. So why then do you make a bracha rishon? So that we spoke about once in the past. Because it's not part of the Ikka Suda, part of the Shviya. It's not tafel to the pas. So it is part of the Suda, it's just not a tafel to the pas. So, at least la'es ata. It seems to me now, you're allowed to eat dessert as long as it's Yom HaShabbos HaGadol Hazeh. If there are new chomers that come up in the future, we'll have to deal with them as they arise. An interesting shayach is Leil Seder Shechal B'Shabbos. Now let's put things in perspective. Yom Tov Boyer Mutter. But Pesach that falls on Shabbos. So I saw both of Shlomo Zalman and Shlomo Shin Samach Dal, Listen Gerels, and Fatashani, Omer Ayin Ches, both discuss, are you allowed to prepare for the Shulchan Aruch, the Suda, during the time of the Seder, which is the first part of the Leil Pesach. A long Suda, you're allowed to prepare for it in the beginning, the whole Suda. Do we look at the Seder and the Shulchan Aruch as one unit? So you can start preparing way in advance, as long as you're during the Seder, before the Seder. Well, we say no, there are two parts. The Leil Seder, the Haggadah part of it is one, and the Suda's part is two. So they both say that it makes sense, it's two different parts. You could prepare before the Shulchan Aruch, for the Shulchan Aruch. But you can't prepare way in advance, say, well, I'm part of the Seder, and the Seder is part of the Shulchan Aruch. Now they also say the Matzah, the Morah, and that which is Munachal Lefonecha, that's part of the Seder. But prepare the Suda way in advance and say, well, we started the Seder, so during the Suda, that's not right. And this is rather negated. The women like to prepare the Suda, they should wait until it's some of the Shulchan Aruch, prepare the Shulchan Aruch. But not to say, well, since we started the Seder, I'll prepare for 4 hours later. That seems to be incorrect. Consider the next group of questions. We'll try to do a few in one shot. They're all the same. You saw it. A mother wants to sleep late, but she wants that child to have the right clothing to make the pile the night before. The question is, there's no other choice. She wants to sleep late, she can't get up so early. Or, let's say, you want to get a sefer from a room, and the svarma are tarubas. Again, usually svarma are laid out nicely, but this is a taruba situation. But you need it first Shabbos morning, you like to learn Shabbos morning, that's particular sefer. But Shabbos morning, there are guests sleeping in the svarma room, you can't go into the room. The only time to do it is Friday night. Is there a heta to do something because it's the only time? The woman is making a simcha. She wants to go to shul. Her son's off. She can't peel after davening because the guests are coming. Is it mutter to prepare before? Peel, to do bayr before davening, there's no other choice. So here, the answer is partial. Unfortunately, there's no other choice, right? But that doesn't make it derech achila. You want to prepare the eggs before the davening, because you have no other choice. But the deciding factor is not if you have a choice or not. The deciding factor is derech achila. Can you explain to me, you prepare the eggs 9 o'clock in the morning and you're first eating 12 o'clock, how does it become derech achila? Had the issa been shaloy l'tsoira, it's unnecessary, then you could say, it's necessary, I have no choice. But that's not the issa. The issa is tikkun oichel. The heta is only if it's derech achila. And way in advance cannot be derech achila. And that's why the Magen Avraham insists, only prepare when you leave the shul after that. You'll say, I have no other choice. Let me tell you, Chilul Shabbos is also not a choice. How is that sanctioned Chilul Shabbos? Now the Lamdan might ask, wait a second, didn't we say something similar earlier? We said you're allowed to peel an orange or an egg. You take the psoilas v'toich Michael. And the answer we gave is, there's no other choice. So you see there is a heta, no other choice. So why is this different? But it's not a kasha. Because there, you're peeling to eat it right away. So we know that that's the derech achila. I'm peeling the orange, I'm eating it. But here you're peeling it 9 o'clock to use it at 12 o'clock or taking out the sacks at night for the day. That's not derech achila. And those stretch of the imagination. The fact that there's no other choice is not a heta unless no other choice indicates that that's derech achila. The Shmer Shabbos has an example, which I don't think today is so common, but a person has a jar of medicine, of different types of medicine. And she needs one of this, one of that, and it's all mixed up, and he wants to take it out before he goes to sleep, so if he needs it in the middle of the night. So that's not laaltah. Now today people have each medicine separately, so you're allowed to take one of each. That's not boyer. But he's talking about a boyer situation. A boyer situation would not be mutter before you go to sleep, but you use it many hours later. Or a mother wants to sleep Shabbos afternoon, and she wants the child to not disturb her, so she peels and whatever the fruit. Here, when you get hungry, take it. That's not samach lachit. So the eighth is get a snack does not have all boyer. Simple law, prepare before Shabbos. But the fact that there's no other choice, that in itself is not a heta. I often wondered about a question which has numerous ramifications. It's mutter if you do it la'alta. Let's say you really don't need it right away, but you'll use it sort of as an HaRav. There's a sefer that's in a pile of taruvas. Again, sometimes swarm are not taruvas. I'm talking about when it's a boyer situation. You take out a sefer Friday night, because you don't want to go and disturb the guest Shabbos morning, the original question. You'll take it out, use it 5 minutes now, put it on your desk, and then Shabbos morning you'll have it. In other words, you're not really taking out to use it primarily for now, but you'll make an aroma. Or the mother takes the sacks Friday night for the child, and it's a warm summer morning, evening, so she wipes her brow, and she puts it down. I use it. So, I looked around. It's interesting, none of the early Achayim discussed this. In the Sefer, Ma'or HaShabbos has a very interesting question. Let's say there are Siddur that are all mixed up. They're a real taruva situation. Someone wants to take out a siddur, not to start davening now. He's first going to go to the mikveh and take a coffee, the half hour to start davening. But he wants to reserve his place. People take a sefer, they open the siddur, they put it down. We have it in yeshiva. People come to Seder, not time. They open the Gemara, and then they go daven and have breakfast. What's the yisoid? It's like an erev techumen. Once you kind of shvisi al payim amal l'chol ruach. So same thing as people got the trick from the yeshiva. They put down a siddur, they reserve their place. So Shlomo Zalman was asked, is that mutter? If it's boyer, is that considered la'alta? So he writes back very innocently, what's the difference? if you're going to daven or you're going to hold your place, if you're taking it out for a distinct usage for right away, that's fine. That's what he said. But that's not a raya to our HaRav, because then you're taking it out for a specific use, a direct use to hold the place. Now, although that's not the normal usage, but it's done. It's a direct use. Our case is HaRav. You're taking it out, using it for a minute, and then putting it down. So I saw a very interesting, a very wunderschöne Einfach, the Sefer Hilchos Shabbos b'Shabbos from Moshe Bar on the Tov Reish Ches. He makes the following distinction. If it's a really HaRav, it's much like I told you, you take a pair of socks and you wipe your brow, I used it. He says that doesn't work. Because here you're talking about a boira kedarka, a boira deraisa. What's the heter of La'alta? So La'alta is derech Achila. So he writes it, I guess, very poetically. Hishtamsha shaloi kedarka, and as Achila shaloi kedarka, ain b'koich la'afkia boira kedarka. Those are Yashir that agree to that. You deal with a boira deraisa. So you can't have a shaloi kedarka that outweighs and counteracts a boira deraisa. So he says basically, if it's one big harama, taking a sock and using it to wipe your brow, that's not an head. But to take out a sefer and to use it, so 5 minutes of learning is a kleinikah. If it's 1 minute of kleinikah, call chamzechel yishma. So basically, if you use it, even in quantity, time, but it's very little, but that would be okay. But to make everything you could use, that's not considered a heter, and that would be HaRav. Now, I should mention the Rav in the end of Seed Gimel. He says, let's say you peel, you make boyer, and you have leftovers, it's fine because you thought you're going to use it. Ubilvad shelo yarim. Don't make HaRav. And that's quoted from Beis Yosef. So you see, the Beis Yosef already says HaRav is awesome, but that's not really a right. Okay, Beis Yosef is talking about if you need not more than 10, and you prepare 15, you say, why not? That in Hilchos Yom Tov, if it's one tircha, Riba Shurim is mutter. The Rav is saying Harama, which means Riba Shurim is awesome. But in our case, when you are taking out a sefer, you are using it for a moment or two, although you're only using it to sort of sanction the malacha, but a use is a use. I think the way to look at it is a shaloi kederach, that is awesome. A regular use, although again the timing of it is not so much, but as long as you use it, it should be fine. Now let's go more specifically to the common cases. As we said, preparing eggs, peeling should only be done before the Suda. There's a well-known story. The Rechaim, the San Zero, used to prepare the eggs by the table. And the story was told that Mekubal asked him why he does this. He said, Al Pi Kabbalah, this great society is preparing it for yourself. The next Shabbos, he had a Ba'alacha by the table. Allah says, why does it ever do it himself? Because I'm afraid my wife doesn't know when I'm coming home, and it won't be Samach L'Suda. I want to make it Samach L'Suda. The third, you get a very simple person that asks him, why do you do it yourself? He says, if you prepare the eggs and onion before Shabbos, it doesn't taste so good. So I want to have it maximum taste. And so in the Sefer Darkei Chaim, which is explained that obviously Rechaim, says the real reason could be he was Choshev Rabbeinu Chananah. That it's only mutter preparing and eating. It's not mutter like the Ramah before the Suda. But he didn't want to do the like Ramah blatantly. So he cloaked it in other reasons, taste good, Kabbalah. Could be they're all true. Because if Taka, he was really avoiding butter, why do it before Shabbos? So maybe Taka, it tasted better, maybe Al Pi Kabbalah. But basically, it's interesting that this reason does resurface occasionally. The Machmir Taka will do it by the Suda. Setting the table, as I mentioned earlier, is kedai to mention only mutter what you need for that Suda. If there's no buyer, if there's not a taruba, you can set the table the night before. But again, if it involves buyer in any way, then it's only mutter samach l'suda. I saw Rav Shlomo Zalman was asked in the Shmir Shabbos, let's say the Isha wants to prepare the table Friday night, which involves buyer, because she simply cannot look at an empty table. It's disturbing, it's distressful, but she enjoys to see the set table. So he said, if indeed, again, intellectual honesty is really necessary for all these shaylas, but if she's doing it taka for tonight, for right now, to enjoy the appearance of the table that's set, that's enough of a tzar. You're not eating. So the answer is when you choose your socks to wear, you're also not eating the socks. It's use. If her use is equally beneficial of the set table, now considering his son, Shmuel is quoted in the Archas Shabbos Kuf Mem Vav, that his father was only makel by silverware, which is not really, some say is not Boyer Deraisa, but making real Boyer, peeling vegetables the night before, so it looks like he's not so happy with his father's hands. He tries to sort of limit it. But again, you have to be honest, you're doing it literally only because you enjoy the appearance of it, not as a harama to get it done Friday night. Simple question, but it's going to mention. Someone has a desk, let's say, or a table that he's not using it, but people don't like them. Mr. Already calls not to have a table without a tablecloth. He wants to take a tablecloth out, but it's all mixed up. The tablecloths are all in disarray. Could he take it out and put it on the table? He's not going to use the table right away. So it is better taking out a tablecloth from a disarray, a mixture. But the answer is that's the use. You don't have to eat the socks, you don't have to eat the tablecloth. So if he wants it to be set now, that's the use. I'll give you another example of bird that might be overlooked. Someone made a kiddush, whatever, kiddush, and he wants to put away the leftover cake. So if you ever make a kiddush, before you put back the tray of cake, you might notice there's one piece of cake has bitten, one piece of cake has herring on it, one piece of cake has wine on it. So you want to take out all the cake that's no longer usable and then put it in the refrigerator. That's bird. Because the cake with the bitten cake, the herring cake, is pshat. But more of a chiddush, which is also pashit, let's say all the cake is in a mixture. You want to put back the regular cake, the cream cake, each one in a separate bag, and then put it in the refrigerator. Then, you're not using a cake, and you're taking whatever the good, there's no pshat, but the problem is not allowed. You're separating it to put it back for use later. So that would be butter that's missing the la'al. Now, just to mention, there are some Rishonim, which words I have with it, that oichel may oichel, separating two oichels, is mutter l'boy b'yoyim, even if it's not la'alta. And the Shulas Yaakov in that shtickle explains, the Shitasa that the heta is tikkun oichel, and the is tikkun oichel. If it's oichel and oichel, there's no tikkun oichel. But Mr. Burr is not happy with that, but I should mention that those that are matir, oichel may oichel, it might be mutter to separate cake from cake. A common question regarding boira, which should be mentioned, sometimes about simcha, as the simcha goes on, the kiddush al zacha, he wants to remove all the dirty plates and the used cups and the cake that's half eaten. That's taking silas from oichel. Now, if each thing, dirty cup, is in a separate place, it's not mixed up with everything else, it's not a taruva situation, there's no problem. So again, the aleph of today is when there's a taruva, when the table looks like a bomb hit, and you have to take out the dirty plates and the dirty cups, and it's a taruva situation. When you have a taruva situation, the only heter would be if there's a aisle, preconditions are met. Take off all the psilas, throw out all the psilas, it's fine. Psilas and psilas, the guns is no bite. The next group of questions is a very challenging one. How do you define the word shimsh? You're allowed to do it la'alt. Allowed dafka to eat it. So this is pashit. The place can say this. You're allowed to prepare more than you need pashit to be mentioned. Maybe you have a guest who likes cucumbers. So you're going to slice a quarter of a cucumber and give it to him. You have to serve next to balabatish. So you're allowed to peel extra to put a nice plate that should look plentiful. The Zalman, in fact, even says that he believes, let's say you want to peel for a guest, you know he won't eat it, but it's only right you have to give him this kibbutz. Now, exactly why that you have to give him a cut up cucumber that's peeled, I don't know. But you have to peel, you have to do butter for a guest, but you know he won't eat it. But it's only meant to offer it. So that's considered al. The benefit of serving, that's an ends for itself. The Rav Pa'olim, in the end of Al Siman Yud Bey, says, Border etzli misvara that if you appear a little bit extra that it should be berevach is considered fine. Again, it doesn't have to be to the last detail. You only have exactly what you need. You let it appear extra. It should look presentable. I used to wonder. Let's say you want to peel a radish, for example. Not going to eat the radish, but put it as a decoration on top of the eggs. But you can't put with a peel. You have to peel it as a decoration, as a centerpiece, for example. So the Ayam L'Shos, the Kuf Chav Ches says that's enough of a tzayir. Believe it or not, that's enough of a tzayir. Because the use is immediate by the fact that it's a decoration. Again, you don't have to eat something. You don't have to eat socks. So he's saying peeling a vegetable then should be a decoration. It should be a centerpiece. That in itself is fine. I think the same thing, someone's asking me, he was a little confused. In many shuls, it's every Shabbos. In some shuls, it's Yom Tov, they sell a leaves. Now, how do you remember 2 day Yom Tov, 3 day Yom Tov, who bought what? So they have an array of cards with each person's name. And then they have little, they have little cards, $25, $50, and you add up, you need $100, and you take the $100 card, and you make a shidduch. The person that bought the aliyah with the amount of money he spent for the aliyah, and you put it in an envelope, and after Shabbos, you send him the bill. So you're taking out a person's name from the array of cards. You'll say, I'm taking the good. I'm not using a keli, but it's not allowed. It's only to bill him with Tzoi Yom Tov. But the truth is, it's not true. There's 2 functions of those cards. Building Tzoi Shabbos, but also knowing now, so otherwise you're going to forget. So the Pais say, either those 2, since you're doing it for now, you have to record it now, otherwise you're going to forget it. That would be enough la'alter, and then look at the checklist. Oyechel, la'alter, and you're okay. Consider this shiloh that happened in my house one. One of my children told me the wonderful news that there is something important in the garbage. Once it was silver, once it was a ring. You could imagine. So it was challenging. Somewhere in the garbage, there's something valuable. Are you allowed to look for it and find it on Shabbos? Now, why wait till Motzei Shabbos? Because they're afraid they might forget, and then the silver goes out in the garbage. Now, how you avoid moving muktzah will leave for a different issue. But the question is, boy, is it mutter to go find the silverware or the ring? Because if I leave it, it's going to get lost. And the benefit I have is finding it, locating it, and removing it now, so I have the menuchas hanefesh that it's not lost. Would that be considered enough of an alta situation that would make it mutter? That's the question that I'm dealing with. So the Maisa, the Paiskim seem to say that is certainly not convincing that that's considered la'alta. Because if you're not using it right away, that's not la'alta. I have the menuchas hanefesh, so menuchas hanefesh is very, very important. But this is not la'alta. So of course the eighth would be take it out and put the ring on, and there you got it. That's la'alta. Or take out the silverware, wash it and use it, even though you wouldn't have used this one. But we said that type of ram is mutter. But the fact is that you have to define la'alta means derech achil. I'll give you another example. Someone sees a pile of svar, mamash looks like a real taruba situation, and all the way on the bottom is a chumash, or in the middle is a chumash. Pashit it bothers him the design of the sefer. He wants to take out the sefer that it shouldn't be in a bezoyah. Again, the same thing. It's very praiseworthy anhaga, but you're not using the sefer. It's not la'alta. The eighth would be take out the sefer and use it. The question we had in the sum, the way they asked me this question, he has to clean up the table. Now, if you ever be at a table with 12 baruch and 8, it looks well used, more like a bomb hit. The kid, he knows everything goes in the garbage. But there's a salt shaker somewhere in the debris, someplace in the table. Is he wanted to take out that salt shaker? And he was a very thoughtful person. You're not using the salt shaker at the end of the sunnah. I told him I once saw from Rabbi Yashin, they asked him this question, what's the heter? His response was, Vezok the heter ha'altz. If this is a taruva, you're taking biyad, it's good, but not la'alta. So how does that make it derech achil? You don't want to throw out the salt shaker, so tell the baruch to keep the salt shaker on the side, or whatever it is, but that doesn't make it la'alta. If you're not going to use it right away, it's not allowed. Now, the case of the tablecloth, you take a tablecloth, so you're spreading it on the table, you're using it right away. That's fine. But this case, this doesn't seem to be allowed. I'll give an example. Imagine someone in a place where there's an Erev, and he has to carry a heavy suitcase. The suitcase is all with haruvas. Is he allowed to remove two heavy things that he doesn't need on Shabbos and put them down, and then he'll carry the suitcase within the Erev? That's clear. It's not allowed. You're taking out what you don't want. It makes it easier to carry. Making it easier to carry doesn't make it allowed. So in all these cases, there's a very good reason to do it. But again, if there's an issa, there's an issa. Using svar very often does not involve boyer, simply put, because each sefer is labeled, identifiable, and discernible. But let's say you have a boyer situation. Let's say you come to shul, you like a specific siddur, which is mixed up with the other siddur, you like a specific chumash. Can you remove the siddur and the chumash and the tilim before davening? Well, the siddur you can use right away, but the chumash is waiting an hour from now. So the priest can say that would be like one big suda. Now, which is the main course, I'm not sure. But the siddur, the chumash, the tilim is one big suda. The person's a lamdan and he learned use 10 svar. So before he starts learning, the suda achas is all the svar he needs. The problem, of course, is putting back svar that are in a taruvos. And that's something I always wondered about. Let's say you learn before suda shlishis, and you have a bunch of svar in taruvos. Is it mutter to put back each one? Because no one's going to use it, everybody's going to shal shuddis. So does it make it la'al to the fact that he doesn't use the sefer without putting it back as part of learning? It's a very nice musa to have. Does that make it la'alta because you have to put it back? I saw Shnei Nizam has in Shulchan Shleim has a different tzad to be makel, that it's not boyer because it's not taruva, because it's part of the use. You use it and return it. I'm not even sure what he means. One thing I will say, never use a sefer and not put it back. So what's the answer? Very simple. I take a few svar at a time. It's not a teruvos, and I put it back. I come back and take the other svar. The problem is when you stack a pile of svar and you want to put it back on the shelf, that to separate each one, that's a teruvos and that's butter. But basically, if you take a few svar at a time, which is not a teruvos situation, that would be fine. A very commonly asked question would be removing challah from a freezer. And I'll tell you the following situation. You tell your child, we need a challah for lechem mishnah. It's in the freezer. 10 minutes later, he says, I can't find it. Now, if you can't find it in a mixed up freezer, obviously it's teruvos. So again, if you have an organized freezer, it's not a teruvos, there's no challah taking out what you want. I'm talking about it's a teruvos freezer, the challah, you can't locate it even after you look. Is it mutter to remove a challah that's in teruvos situation? So that's one thing is partial. If you're using it right away for lechem mishnah, that's la'alt. Taking the good, use it right away. But let's say you take it out 2 hours before Shabbos Shuddis, so it will defrost and it'll be ready for Shabbos Shuddis. So I would have thought, well, you're not using it for 2 hours, but then again, you're allowed to prepare for a big suda that you're not using for 2 hours. So this be achon. And I did see Makila. If you need 2 hours for it to defrost, take it out 2 hours before. Don't take it out at night for the next day. That's too much, not la'alta. But 2 hours for 2 hours should be okay. But you're on machmir. Probably most places are machmir. The Ayam Shulis quotes Abayashim or Niskarel said a machmir. And what's troubling with Shnei Zalman in the new Shmir HaShav is also machmir. And basically what he says is, derech achilah means this is the way to eat. You have to peel an orange to eat it. You can't eat the peel. But you could defrost challah before Shabbos, and then you can eat it on Shabbos. He says if someone is so makbid not to defrost it until he's ready to eat it, so maybe that would be derech achilah. But he says the defrosting of the challah is not necessarily done before you eat. You can do it before. Because he has a problem with considering that to be a derech achilah. He does make a concession if you very makbid to keep it in for 2 hours until frozen until you need it mamish. You take it out 2 hours that's needed. That's derech achilah. But he says basically if you're not so makbid, he says take it out before Shabbos, and he does not consider that derech achila. Again, I really fail to understand why that's different than any other hachana, but when I try to do, at least my own home is, if you know you need challah in the freezer, it's a very simple way before Shabbos, take it out of the taruvais, put it in the front of the freezer, on the door, someplace that is located, that's easily located. Nope. When you come on Shabbos and it's not a taruvais, there's no problem. Someone asked me, Michigan say the Torah at night for the next day's lane. You don't lane at night for the next day. So that's a very good idea. To avoid Terech and Sigur. Is that boyer? Of course not. Michigan say Torah is not boyer, and that's the place is fine. I'll give you a thought-provoking question. Someone knocks on your door Friday night. He wants to borrow a certain safe. Oh, that safe is an old safe. It's with all my old swarm. There are no labels. It's mamish and taruvas. When do you want it for? I need it for tomorrow morning. So why don't you come tomorrow morning? Because you're sleeping when I want to learn. I don't want to wake you up. So the question is, are you allowed to make boyer tonight to give someone the chesed, in Shoyal Seifa, the Oislap B'chalais? You have to do the mitzvah right now. But he's going to first use it tomorrow morning. Does that make it la'al because you want to complete your ma'aseh chesed? Or do we look at the user and of him it's not la'al? So I'll rephrase that question. You'll see that the question really doesn't have much merit. Let's say a person goes visit his parents and he has a Shabbos Suda there, and he wants to be a devoted son. So inside he's peeling all the vegetables and all the eggs for his parents' Shabbos Sudas. It's in 8 hours from now. Keep it up. Keep it up is a wonderful mitzvah. I try to do it myself also. But how does that make it derech achila? Keep it up is a mitzvah. That doesn't make the peeling derech achila. And it seems that this is the same thing without borrowing, giving a sefer. If he's not using it right away, if he can't do it for tomorrow, so how would you do it for tomorrow? And what's beautiful, this is an Ur Sameach. Listen to what Ur Sameach, I saw the Shmuel Shabbos quotes this. In Shabbos Chav Gimel Tezayin, the Rambam says if someone was mafish Trumas and Ma'aser before Shabbos, he should actually separate it on Shabbos to give it to the Kohen, unless the Kohen eats by him. And that's puzzling. He can't do it, but if the Kohen's there, he could do it. Why? Said the Ur Sameach, because since you were mafish before Shabbos, so some is Truma and some is not. It's like two meaning. One, because he can't eat the Truma. Right? Two meaning is boyer. So to take it off, separating would be boyer unless the Kohen is there and he's eating it right away, so it's la'al. Why can I say I'm separating it? Because I want to do the mitzvah of giving it to the Kohen even though he won't eat it. Apparently, the fact that he's not using it, your mitzvah doesn't justify the boyer. Rav Shlomo Zalman in Shulchan Shlomo Shir Nun Vav is makel on this question, and in fact it's learning from the Ur Sameach. But basically, it's noteworthy. Rav Shlomo Zalman is only makel to lend someone an item. The case of kibbud of, he himself is machmir. I don't know how to explain that, but that's what he says. Basically, he is makel to lend someone an item, but not the case of kibbud. Let's say I don't like carrot. Can I take a carrot that I don't like and give it to my child who likes the carrot? For me, it's tzaylas. For him, it's eichel. So with that, we're going to use the previous yisod. I'm allowed to make boyer for someone else. So when I take the carrot, I should have in mind, I'm giving him eichel to make boyer eichel for someone else is perfectly good. Even though for me it's tzaylas, it doesn't make it good. Let me give you some food for thought. An early Einik Shabbos, even though it's Sunday, but something that you could enjoy, hopefully by the Shabbos table. Imagine the following case. Someone peeled an orange to eat it. But after he finished peeling it, he decides he doesn't want the orange. Now he has a question, does he have to eat the orange? He made a ma'aser boyer, but it's not allowed. Can he put it away for later? Or maybe it's Chil Shabbos that's asa v'anah. Sounds funny, but Zot the Pri Megadim, and see if you caught him down. This very case, I wouldn't say it's Chil Shabbos Deraisa because it's not Moleches Machshavos. He started doing it better. But like Aruch Lemev Hachi, it's not a good idea to leave it as such. Eat a little bit of it now. Because if you ate and left over, it's fine. But you never ate at all, not a good idea, said the Pri Megadim. Comes again, the Chavetz Chaim Sharatzin Sifkat Hey. Tzarech Raya L'Dvar, Ayin Shinta Zayin Sivav. I don't agree to the Garden. Look at Shinta Zayin Sivav. Look, Chavetz Chaim says, look there, I look there. And listen to Chavetz Chaim's kasha. The halach is say the trapping is not dafka if you grab an animal or you catch a fish on a fishing rod. If you confine an animal into a small room that it can't escape, you put a deer in the yard, let's say, that's also tzeidah. Get a deer in a big room, it's not trapped, but a big animal in a small room, that's considered tzeidah. Says the mechaber there, let's say a deer is in a small room and someone sits down next to the door, he's a grois yid, he blocks the door and the deer can't escape. That's tzeidah. Says the mechaber, Shem Zayin Sivav, and let's say a second yid sits down next to the first yid. Anything wrong with that? No. Why not? Because the animal's trapped. Then the grois yid gets up and the second yid is trapping the animal. Says the mechaber, it's mutter. Why is it mutter? He didn't do anything. So friend the Chavetz Chaim, you see, he didn't do anything initially, even though now it translates into Hilchos Shabbos. It's okay. So why is peeling an orange any worse? But what did the Megadim hold everybody say? Megadim held that it's fundamentally different. Sitting down by a trapped deer is not a ma'aseh tzeidah. But peeling an orange is a ma'aseh tzeidah with the head of b'tzida. The head is eating it. If you're not eating it, it was a Hilchos Shabbos. So what did the Chavetz Chaim hold? The rain was Maser Midvash. The Chavetz Chaim held that peeling an orange with tzarech achilah is a derech achilah and not a ma'aseh boyer. So it's very much similar to sitting down next to the person that's by the tzeidah. It's not a Hilchos Shabbos. But what's the other half of this shayla? To be more beautiful. Let's say a strange person in a moment of weakness, someone said, I'm peeling an orange, not to eat it now, a strange person. As soon as he finishes, he overtaken by Hirachua and he slams it in his mouth. The whole kazayas down his mouth. Did he rectify the Hilchos Shabbos from afraid? Now, I do know if you put a person puts bread in the oven and removes it instantly, he wasn't a Hilchos Shabbos. Because there's no baking. But here he peeled the arm. So the chayra, it can't be that it's a heta. Because if it is a heta, so how could you ever give a person hasra? It's always an hasra suffix. He might decide to eat it. But we can do better than that. Listen to this. The Gemara Menachos has the following case. Someone that goes fishing with the fishing net on Shabbos, chas v'sholom, is chayiv al tzeidah. Well, this Shabbos was his good day. He went fishing, wrong, with a kavana, a bad kavana, but he happened to pick up with the fishing net a baby that just had fallen into the river. So he got a fish, and he got a baby. And he's in all the headlines Sunday morning, he saved the baby. The ma'aseh that he did of trapping the fish and the baby, was he either because he trapped the fish on Shabbos? Would that save him? Said the Gemara, no. Because his ma'aseh was a ma'aseh hatzalah, he saved the baby, and the ma'aseh is the siyachis for a head. So do we see a riot in our case? That you see, it's mutter because he did it at the end of the day, he was okay. Does that explain that it's mutter to eat the orange? The answer is certainly not. Because there, he had a bad machshav. But the ma'aseh that he did was a ma'aseh of hatzalah. Our case, what did he do? He peeled. The kavanah was no good, the ma'aseh was no good. Who said eating it would help? So it's more likely that it should not be done because there is a ma'aseh issa that later we cannot reverse.